Sarwa.
No.
Tatilla the Paro Kelan Gawaton, Tatatil, Linese Kelan Gawatonia Mintusiva, Garrison, Korange, and the big Rang without Korankeling warrior, the soul tower Korankeling. Timothy Tilia Kelan Gawasman to Asiva. The country that you put in the Amada. Tipasla Diane, but the daughter, the Paro.
In again, that the decas or Gawad Drube is Tunang is so much your yomara.
La
Gawad Drube Tunang is so much yomara, Pandel Casati, Legdesha, Pandel Tavapol, Tunang is so much your yomara.
Chitang get that, Machitan Sinata, but Pumbata Pumzimi in the Pumbat semi banded like Nidija like a Tuzlan Yorova.
I don't know.
Kilan Jina Yomara, wrong thing to Jackson and the 2 years somebody said those Jenan to know me. She don't go on you got you Tonga Jibaro.
Some of yours are
Yoro.
Doesn't seem to be some of
the
So we are in the middle of page 270. Those who have electronic version, you can see that's called objection, right? So this objection is kind of brought by the third party. It looks like somebody, kind of gets so excited and come in between Baba Vivek and Chandagiri, like, hey, I have something to say, something. So this is not Chandagiri saying something to Baba Vivek or Baba Vivek saying something to right. This is another critic, who probably got excited in the middle of this, like, hey, let me say something here. So his or her objection, or their objection is, that you just pointed a contradiction in the Baba Viveka's right position, right? And so what established those contradictions? Is there a valid cognition that's acceptable to both parties that established that contradiction or not, right? Or are those contradictions just simply do with two different, your assertions, right, your viewpoints? See, that are two different questions, right? Can we establish that contradiction from a valid cognition point of view, right? And is there a valid cognition that is acceptable to both parties, means Baba Viveka and Chandakiri? Or are these contradictions you point out simply to do with assertions? Okay? And if these are to do with assertions, then he said, really, you cannot raise those contradictions because Baba Viveka is simply saying that accept already that eyes don't see themselves, but eyes see forms. Okay? And, there is no contradiction there. Okay? Because eyes don't see, it's even hard to say in English. Visual consciousness does not see itself, but it sees forms, right? That's the assertion. Okay? And so I was checking with Geshe, so how do we kind of address that issue? And of course, in one sense, Baba Viveka and Chandakiri both accept there is such thing as a subjective perception that's valid to an object, isn't it? And they both could accept there is a valid visual perception of a form. Okay? There's acceptance in a general sense. But now when the Baba Viveka claims that valid perception has to be, right, in the sense of intrinsicness, right? That valid cognition sees its object intrinsically, and then Chandakiri like, wait, okay. Now we are not talking in the same language and we are not on the same page, So that's what the difference is. The difference comes only when the intrinsic reality or intrinsicness is kind of brought into the picture. Other than that, both accept there are valid cognitions pertaining to forms and objects.
That in the car said the wrong Yoke language hasn't had this. This is what so Tajo said. Paruba Sugo Korakare, Suzupa called Kelan that the Sedan didn't give out of the tone. In the China, you are the Jas, ye got home with those. Love in the silver. No. It's a lana and hasn't tagged this over. Or this is what Coos and the Kelan base. Cherry, she that Marunyano, you made this star, said any Susan Gawatomba, Maris, any parable to the Garza. To know the same to the Yeva Gaja Mari, carry in a mina, Carson, Ron Meta, not Rangi, Mutre, Rangi, Gavan, similar to the Kelan of the Bishop was, did it, and Ron Metana, Ron Mutre, any. Rangi la tawa gewadi in semi top there semi to yoro
No.
mege ran la metawa da en thon ta ba so metawa ni semi to yoro
아, 된다 무슨 말
semi to yoro o cheda ti kela ta mares
알아.
mege koran la metawa da thon ta ba so metawa ni ga semi to yoro cheda ti karsa nghe thì thông tôi cho nó thì riêng mình được xe chơi chơi sự cái gì mà đấy sao cả xem biết cho đi xem rồi đúng không còn những cái what xem biết rồi sao ta đã được được
So again, the same critique probably, maybe challenging Chandrakirti more here. Say, but if your whole point is that, like from my, point of view, I think there are those contradictions in the Baba Viveka's position. Then he said, it's just maybe something you are saying is not there. It's very absurd, That's the point being raised here. And Chandrakirti said, you know what, I'm not simply saying it because it's something to do with my assertions, but based upon valid cognitions, I'm stating my case, which is that, based upon valid cognitions, we can establish that eyes don't see themselves. It's not just simply something I assert and maybe, maybe or not. It's not that. It's valid cognition can establish that. And based upon valid cognition, we can establish that I see their objects, visible forms, So my argument is based upon pramana or valid cognitions, not because this is my assertion, or I think it should be,
Oh, this karsa minjo gosa on tsema ti parubala teni gewa ngebar chebe chomu ku kela la temba chigo nyana nguma ngor gewa duyi tsamar chobani ram ngu chebe hejan jewal chobal debesi ta nguma gaga en tsama yishi ram ngu chebe hejan jewursi kelang ti arisi hotel teni heworis te ya mena rangi ti kelani shedan gewa o tisi war dan gewa do that nguma gaga en tsama so chi de ram ngu chebe en chul tsama song go siores sheda te dan ngubu ni zin gewa sha de yorwa
la
ram ngu chebe chul tsama ro go se de da jidang ge ni ram ngu chebe chul tsama ro yo marwa te yo go na
ala
yo marwa
yo de man
ka sa gewa nguma gewa do de jing te ya me na ram ke lan ni sheda gewa do se je o de ji me na rang ke lan ne shedan gewa drop sheja la ngo te rang shi me jang chaman jo ba mingyo la mingyo wa khol chup se ne den de cheme do ne che no rang shi me ba to be ta ni ba yin be de la rang la me da na rang ngo to ba be ta ye wan gewa no shi drop ji go de nan da we sha ye Look, Toban, the Dali shape do, and the Java Kung the Shiva. She imita. That didn't say Kartak Jews human did that. Karsa, Tia, Mena, Rang Kelang, Shadawa, your dropped over. Shejala, Rang Wood, Rashi Mejang. Summer Joba Mingoa, call it drop scenes, did a cemetery, did it, that did it here, can't you? Semaine yi sheja rang sing jobale seman rogu mare se in those jobs are na any rang sing yi marobal seman ra cha ro mare shagro o te sha son da in rang yi me to ga ta ro ro rang wu zu yi sa la ro ro o te sema yo mo se du ya de zu do de de se kan de rang yi me ba ro de ni in de ti ju chi ju sema me du se ro ya ji zen khar phe do so na in nguma di cheja yin shi rang ngu zhe ce men zhou guo khui lan zang da ti mi du sin ge wa de ne ga wen de zang le en rang ngu che ce ma yin shi rang ngu zhe shu ce ma zhou se di shu len ga zhong yi so sha gu duo o ti ga zhou na en o me da pen do yo re ge wa de guo yi de ti zhe zhe ba ti zhe
So we are on top of page 271 where caption reads reply. And the query is at the bottom of page 270 or somewhere there in the electronic version. So what Geshe has stated is that all the essentialists, Mawa, Tibetan, so they believe in intrinsic existence, right? Things must exist intrinsically, both subject and object. and subject sees its object intrinsically, right? That's their main thesis, isn't it? Okay. And so Chandrakirti or Prasangika says that there are no valid cognitions that can establish the intrinsic existence of subject and object. Okay. So they show that contradictions in their assertions, how things could not exist intrinsically. If things were to exist intrinsically, there's no reason why subjects couldn't see themselves, but only objects, right? There's no other reason. So all those contradictions are brought forth for the sole purpose of showing that things are empty of intrinsicness or intrinsic existence, isn't it? There are valid cognitions that can establish the emptiness or the lack of intrinsic reality. Yeah? And so if we can understand the contradictions being brought out, right, why that could not be possible, there's a contradiction, then that understanding of the knowledge will facilitate understanding of emptiness, right? Understanding the ultimate reality, which is emptiness of intrinsic reality. So on top of page 271, the last kind of a sentence, which is part of the reply or the response, reads, I quote, or I read, therefore, if you want to understand Chandrakirti's system, you should analyze these points in detail and penetrate their meaning, unquote, right? As Geshe said. So the idea here is not really easy to understand the Chandrakirti's system, or for that matter, Prasangika. It requires a lot of, how should I say, critical thinking, analysis, and deeper points. We just cannot just easily understand it like that. So it requires a lot of critical thinking, analysis, and really penetrating into a deeper meaning of things. So Geshe would like to stop there today, and yes, Robert in the back, Geshe, your back, the back of the lady, yeah, okay, well, go ahead. Doesn't matter.
Is this on?
Yeah. Or maybe not. Can you hit on it or something? Sure.
I was taking it that the same arguments apply to the ears.
Uh-huh.
Basically, the eyes and the ears are wonderful, elaborate receivers of different wavelengths. And it's the brain that's actually doing the interpreting.
Yeah.
I think that, well, I believe there'd be a dynamic to your ability to see or hear something. Mm-hmm. The Honorable Geshe or Rinpoche could look at me with greater clarity than I could look at myself. Uh-huh. And therefore, I would think that with different levels of enlightenment,
yes,
as I proceed to different heights of enlightenment, I would see things with greater clarity. Uh-huh. So that's the dynamic. Okay. And I guess to further complicate things, if I see you intrinsically or ultimately don't exist anyway. So that's confusing. But anyway, please respond to whether there is a dynamics to the.
Yeah. Thank you. Korang da samjuro se do again. This is da karso ore da dirba ge ngaju yu jing namsha she ro again. ane pena da karso ore sosogi karso ore da shebe gi se da mason ro again. Ya chere du da korang sin ngaju da karso kom nyamleng thon se ne ro again. Jidu kala an ngal ma don wa din de ane sar thwa da ane se ro thwa da ro again. Chema shishin thwa de yon sig ro ase ro again. So da di karso sheba korang gi chejo ro cha da ro again. Ane korang per sha ba jina ane gengi korang le ya ta be na kora ni ju kora ha ma go ba di ro wa da gengi da karso ore bi ge jin nam jo ro che yu za ro again. Ha go ba de yon sig ro ase ge. 제사 번나 건도 세리기 셰인도 간도 경안조 지기다 미기 통화대 다 자기 암저 고대 되게도 강하게 돈다 뭐마디 레벨기 디 레시기 거스로하게 거 가르쳐 들어와 딘레 레시 들어와게 그래서 디게 상말로 다 직된 때문에 더 먹고 싶어하게 다이내믹스 때문에 더 먹고 싶을 거 네디고 서래사게 딘레 진배 나서 그러다지
됐네. 가르치는 다 되네서 해야 되나. 게임은 좀 해야 되나.
그래
예. 다 가지고 공부해서 퇴바시고서는 가서 가서 유디 두고 유쪽이 유모부터 그러. 뒤때에서 따다셔.
So Geshe accepts with where you talk about the dynamic nature of things, where we talk about the complexity of things, is to do with the whole idea, the concept of pratit samutpada, dependent arising or interdependent origination. That to be able to perceive or assess or even try to make sense of it, right? We depend on many factors and conditions, So if all those necessary causes and conditions are assembled together, then we're able to perceive things, right, correctly and understand what it is. If something is missing in that factor, then we may not be able to see it exactly as it is, So that shows the complexity and the dynamic nature of subject and object, the interdependent origination. So he thought. Any other thought? Oh, Robert. Yeah.
Throughout the teaching of the long rim,
Yes.
there's always incorrect ways to look at things,
Yes.
and correct ways to do things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just guessing that goes on throughout the whole teachings, and it's maybe a question to you. Maybe it's just
Sure.
way too easy for you.
Yeah.
Initially.
Sure.
Is that so that we can see the correct point of view, like this guy is wrong, and then this guy is right, or why do they set it up like that? Why don't they just give the correct view, like like the Senecas,
Okay. Okay.
Why do we have to look or even hear their point of view?
The incorrect version,
the
right?
incorrect version, when we should just learn the correct
Yeah.
version of things.
Yeah.
Is that just what they've done through the years to
Sure.
make
Okay.
the examples that much more clear for
Sure.
us?
Okay. No, I got your point. Or at least I think I did.
You could even answer that without having
Yeah.
asking Geshe.
No, I will defer to Geshe. I'm just a bridge here. Only when I add things, I said footnotes, and I can go wrong in that, or I could get award there. I don't know. That's footnote is mine, Ken kona di desha ta tanda samji chem ta tanda lamrim ki ta di rawa ken shuna mango she de je kan sana ta ngazo ngobe ne je ine yul rawa jugdan je rawa ken lo khashe gi ane bege yul jugdan de nord de bada rawa ken kyong gi cha ta khashe ta ko ta da yin de bche rawa che san ta dinde chen ta tanda di zhe ba da ma so ne rawa ken nord da de dinde de ta ngone ta dang dinde de se sung de tong du sa rawa ken kona samdo che be na ta kan ngazo ta ta 따다가 그냥 디고 쇼로와 약을 찾고도 마셔버지 인지면 좀 놀겨도 시작과 때 가려 내서 그러게 ben 두스다고 그러다 두스는 따다 레디오 레슬랍스나 고대 버르지 요러게 다 봐준 거 인력도 야 일라는 와 어디
제레 다데데라 가서 도시 그 내가를下주이나 그래서 해된 지기들이 해도도도 뭐봐 통보디 차 타도 지가는 봐 현우가야 지기세 되네 뒤정로 지샤 영조들 저와시 내제는 성관시나 아니 예반이 시고로 와 진짜 가지다 저봐 용거야 여러분들 그 제바 힘주셔야 돈달라 정말 내려다세 내려 돈인도 공을 가져 내려다세 라샤나 엔데 카도 데라 이메레서 되네 주제와 디가 제바 현다 메는 데랑 섬되나 주다 양 현다 지 민다 통서는 얘도 그 가도 거라 담보군지 가샤시잖아 얘는 샘리 거라 요나 템보를 주스 그거 담아도 없어 저거로 소 세명이나 거기 세명이면 더 나다 더 먹고 싶고 그러 어디에 다 도달을 쓰는
So Geshe says that why we have this kind of a debate or argumentation where the opponent's viewpoint is stated and then the argument or critiques laid against that, right? Why do we have this such a thing going back and forth? Because that tells us that we really need to use our critical thinking intelligence at optimum level to be able to understand ultimate reality. Right from the beginning, if somebody only tells you this is what it is and this is what you should, accept it, but at that time, looks like, oh yeah, that's what it is. And then as we started to analyze it, because we are human beings, right? Then we started to see many problems like, oh, what about that? What about this? What about this? And then we get confused and then we lose the whole thing, Because right from the beginning, and when we go into this kind of analysis and debate, then that really helps us to be able to sort out, what are the pitfalls that we should avoid and what is, the right kind of way or the process we should go through. So that's why it tells us that we really need to use critical thinking and analysis at optimum level to be able to understand these things deeply. It's not something that we can just avoid the what we call all this argumentation, tell you what it is, think this way and go this way, because it's not that easy,
Sure.
Yeah.
어때는 땅한테 라리로 이네 니마 대전이가 더 처음이다 세야도다 대화 시험이 전에 막 가도 니레들에서 뭐도 지어가서 기라시고 온다. 다다데 돈이 거들래요. 이제 다 내가 내가도 두고라. 다 가가 논주 중서도 대토여서 저도 거다 인지면 계좌 망보 셰네. 이제 거 장마서 가지고 이제 방범을 셰 과일 지요 대샤 현지 말아. 어떻게 잘해.
So when we look at this Lamrim text at the beginning, how it all starts with, the cultivating a proper relationship with qualified spiritual master, and appreciating our fully endowed human form, precious human life with, characteristics, and thinking about impermanence, right? So those things almost, kind of talked about, right? Your life is precious. There are 18 qualities, right? So it's kind of laid out that way. Now we are at the end of the Lamrim, where we're really dealing with, some of the most difficult things, right? Ultimate reality nature. Now this is not something can be just talked and given like, this is what it is, It requires a lot of thinking, analysis, and that's why now we see a lot of argumentations and a lot of critiques and a lot of these people raising this point, that point, and, so that shows us that accessing ultimate reality is not an easy thing. It requires a lot of, thinking. It requires a lot of clarifications. It requires a lot of pointing out where the pitfalls and why that is something, not feasible, and, all of those. So that's why at the end of the Lamrim, we get into more complex argumentations and debate and critical analysis. Yeah. But in the beginning, it's like your life is precious. You're very fortunate. It's very meaningful. Do the good thing. Don't do the bad thing. It's kind of goes that way, right? But here, no, it's not enough. A Lama can simply say, "Hey, this is what emptiness is. Take it. Okay, think this way." No, it requires, yeah. Yes, sir. Let me. Yeah. Sure. Yeah, sure.
All right,
Yeah,
give it
it's
a
on.
tap. Yeah. Well, actually, what he said was that he observed the same thing in the whole of Lamrim. And I have to agree that even in the lowest level, starting with the Guru devotion and precious human rebirth and all that, wrong perceptions, wrong ideas are refuted. So it's from the very beginning. It's not just giving it to you, but the idea even there, because we carry. They're not wrong perceptions of other people. They're our own wrong perceptions.
Yeah. Alors, quand on check this, what that on the coil lab the Jumjer stones, so Sapana, Lamring Gola in being a dash, Coshin Tenju in the kind of Rawage, and then called Shin Tenju Log, but that Mandi which Rawage, Mangosung to was Rawage, Mother Chick, Shin Tenju do station degrees Rawage. Just what Cheba said, Tangone test you take Rawage, Shin Tenju Casa, Jun shot on the young about the Rawage, or the City Column, soon do kind of Kajun Rawage, Jung Chad did a lot of Chad did to get the Sego, the lot of the missing lot of 소설 녹도 와게. 어디에 시에 용어로 치고도 와서 그렇게.
가래다 좋아도 가래사.
말다변다 된 개인이 되게 디스 말밖에 안 된다. 동이 살리도 갔다 제바 셰드 마음을 누고서 와게. 개인 된조니야가 되듯이 간저 있는 막 숨을 쉬어서 와게. 프랑스에 람리 당고 소인데 신인 된지네 마 제바로 못 보는 것도 와서 신인 된주 록바. 그봐 신인 된지 양다 와체당 저 와게. 그래서
신인 된지를 본다. 때문에 표현 마대면 님이서 뭐도 디건이야. 저와서 가요 말하다. 비제 요 말하. 신이 생이지요 말다. 양다 받다 아니 로고 신이 계절을 모두 저 이제 누드문다 하시는 가요 말와.
No, no, no.
일단
No. So Geshe wants to clarify that yes, you're right that in the beginning when we talk about Guru devotion, right? I mean, things is we talk about the benefits of cultivating it, right? The demerits or the disadvantages of not relying upon that. But there's no such, kind of argumentations and assertions being made, just like a debate here, right? Here, it's really to do with the fundamental standpoint of viewpoint. There is like, this is the wrong way of Guru devotion, this is the right way of Guru devotion, do the right way, you get a benefit, right? It's not so much argumentation, debate going on there,
Well, again, I have to
Yeah.
take issue with that because actually there is, when you have to cultivate certain perceptions of the Guru, there's a lot of, there are 4 proofs that why we should think of the Guru as a Buddha. So there's a lot of argumentation going on. Not about the benefits, yes, I agree with that, about that, but the most important part of it, definitely. And same with precious human rebirth, it has to be proven that that's the case because none of us actually believe that.
Right. 알아가는 데서 경기 소마 이내 양 카젤이 양 먼저 비게 달람진기 고신이 된주 이내에 된주냐가 되게 갖고 김전지 신도도 걸어가게 아 마더지게 베나다 신이 안에 중보이나 안에 가서다 상경을 스탑을 사저러가게 제고 김전 망고 시에 내려가게 저도 먼저 그 생을 중을 지금도 저러가게 마더지 다가라 레스트로가게 랍데메 편연 삼다 님이 삼만이 버러가게 거기를 지원도 왔어 당은 배는 가서 된전이가 디체비네 배 가서 강가 디 세명에도 말하게 된저 다이네 디게 강 루제고 내려가게 근데 된전이에 가버 된셔버 아니 배 디게 강가 좀제 망고 시에지요 되는 서러가게
나 된전이가 저다 된저 타고 니래지고 그랬어. 근데 망고지가 말했어야 돼. 강아서 자상시고 봐. 다 디시리다는 다 디소도 다 사모도나 쳐고 봐. 뭐도 양 가지 전에 된저서야 니래서 가지 된저 니래서야 니 누드 문다 니 요라카요 말아.
I think still Geshe kind of stays with his goal. He said, but yeah, you have a point there where we do use reasoning to, how should I say, why our Guru should be seen as a Buddha, and in what ways our life is precious and all of that. But he said, but there's not so much disagreement, Nobody critics say, I don't agree with the fully endowed human form, you got it wrong. So there's not such kind of a standpoint there. We say, what are the necessary causes we must create to get a fully endowed form and how things will go wrong. But nobody say, no, there's no 18, there's 15, no precious, it's not, there's no such disagreement there.
Yes. So about this whole thing is, if I understand correctly, Baba finds fault with Buddha Palita. I'm not sure if that was explicitly stated, for not using syllogisms, but only using consequentialist reasoning.
So,
Now, and he says that consequentialist reasoning needs to be supplemented by syllogistic reasoning, according to Bhava Viveka. He says, it's not enough to use consequentialist reasoning. It has to be supplemented by syllogistic reasoning, according to Bhava Viveka. That's why he disagrees with Buddha Palita. Now that implies that he thinks that the elements of the syllogism thinks of the elements of the syllogism as existing intrinsically. And this is the main point of disagreement between Chandrakirti. Yes. So if he had not insisted on the use of syllogism, autonomous syllogism, everything would have been all right. But and this insistence, if I understand correctly, is what actually exposes him as I can't read my writing. A Russian spy? No, that makes no sense. No, a closet essentialist. It's a closet essentialist. And so does he ever explicitly actually assert that conventional objects exist intrinsically, or there's unmistaken intrinsic valid perception of conventional objects? Or is it a conclusion of Chandrakirti based on the fact that he insists on autonomous logistic reasoning?
Yeah, sure. So the Loben Lengden Chegi, the Loben Sanjang Buddha Balita Wage, Nalia Dajik Zubar Wage, Jen and the Buddha Balita, the Loben Sanjangi, the Secretary, and the Davichin were Wage. The Takoran, the Sabon Woman of the Tatanda, 게 랑규 게 따대로와
어디.
디 시료 가라 안 최담자 랑 친이 druku도 세저로 와게
어디.
디 저번 뭐만 디 차더로 세자
어디.
최담자 랑 친이 druba 임베 전자 안 최담자 다 된 담아 druku가 차더로 와다
어디.
다변원 전에
어디.
와게 저자 저다 고나 간디 쉬어 거도 디르샤 다 단다 디 로벨 랭덴 제기로 와게 최담자 랑 친이 druba 인스로 와게
어디.
가서 타녀도 와게
어디.
안 랑게 친이도 druba 인세디 세가 되는 소요래 양반된 다베게로와 안에 로벨 랭덴 제기 뎌바디로 와게
어디.
아들 시선은 다 내가 인고고도 세저버저 인고래 빼세버랑 송샤 그래서 최담자 랑게 친이 druba 타녀도 친이 druba 세디
알레 데 여러 단다 디 텐도가도 데려서 순지바 온데 시에다 랑데 시 저시세 단데 셔러드면 데려 여러시기도 와
시럽 좀에
셔러드 다 닌데 짜게 들어와데 다데 상기장 정저야 된주 데려와
알레요 상지로 가고자 된지
데려와 셔데 랑데 시 저시데 랑와세다 랑유니 내지바데 시기도 와 세명에 봤다 세명 줘봐서야 좀 하래 찍바 돼서 셔데 랑주세다 세가 도스 어디서 랑드 세야 도스 랑드 시는 시데 랑주가 온데 시고요 순지만 시데 태교 온데 시고와 셔데 다다 상시장에 다데 저 부다발나리요 아디 다시가 탱규시고요 어디 탱규도 저러 탱규랑 온데 시고요 랑주 있다야다 온데 시고요 따버니 시로와 셔데 랑주세야다 랑드시야 랑와시 온데 시야디 랑와다 랑주 찍바레시 셔데 근데 저 코너 랑주 켈링고 세가 요레스 셔러드면 요레스
단단히 겐디 보다 단단히 세만 남자 세마 가서 benata rangyu ta yanda kayenda ane direge chema de ya ane kaso ta motive chema isa choro wage dige sebu chung yo basa
ale de sewor da kaso lingde de sewor da 옹무도 시도 kelego da 먼저 다 범지미기서 다 나지 dige ganga ane 그 나와다 ane 유 chema keleng 거라
물라로와
티시 나와다 시
그 세부 chung de 거we
되게 오시나 다 나와다 좀 데모 줘는 거라
물라래 아니
나와다 데도 chema 거라 어디 되고
이나마다 단다 로멘 랭데 지기 요 비게 유군에로 wage 랑은 좀 나와다도 요르세디 그 세부 전다 가서 근데 세마대로 와게 마루베 세마를 세부지 송샤로 서게
다 마두에 있어 다 마두에 있으잖아
알레 세마 인스케 저게
자 세마스가 마두에 있어로
알레 디겐 마루베
마두에 다 나다 저거라
데 세부 송데 아단 셰럽 주면나 요네디
와데 마두에 셰럽 주면 요베든 비 단지 뭐 랑원 시자디 셰럽 주면 요
Geshe says that Baba Viveka's kind of critique of Buddhapalita is captured in his work called Sherab Chume, Light of Wisdom. Okay? And there, where Baba Viveka takes issue with Buddhapalita syllogism, and he's asking that in terms of whether that is in the kind of sense of autonomousness or something else. And the word in that, the word is Rama, autonomous, right? So he says explicitly there, Now with regard to whether the valid cognition is, unmistaken or not, Geshe doesn't. He states it clearly in the Sherab Chume, Light of Wisdom, but this is something I think he didn't use the word necessarily valid cognition, but what he said is, how things appear to be intrinsically existent to our perceptions, and he believes, our perceptions are unmistaken to that. Okay, so based upon that, then, the assertion is that Baba Vivek accepts unmistaken valid cognitions, So, yeah.
His main sin is that he insists on the autonomous syllogistic reasoning. That's clear. There's
단다디 랑규가 다양다디 아니 세브세장제 다단다 로벨 랭덴지기 시럽 주면은 송도 거로 왔어요. 세브세장제 송도 거. Yes.
데 가르다 데도와 가지다 되나 신경도 가지는 단다에 방안도 셰바잔자 피지 데데를 수고다. 왜 니게 되잖아요. 랑규도 파 세가 동마 이제 아니 랭덴지기 그래서 랑규게 데데 세가 요 말스 데데 신경도 와. 지도는 예시가 리신이 무는도 와. 리신이 무는데 니 셔라드면 랑규세야 랑원신이 저 수지방시 요레스.现在 랑원시세야 되다 랑규니 직바인스. 우리 리신이 무는 송샤.
알아놓스. 단다게 딩이마다 가서 봐. 그러면 상시장 이야리야 안에 랑규바도 텐주기 야와 요물스면 가서.
요말.
알아놓스.
상시 요말 파발로 그다 지범을 송으로와
나래.
다 되는데 링데 가자 상시장이 애는 딘저와 당고도 상시장래도 와
나래. 자식이 되었던 거.
상시장에 다들 타이겨한 거 버리고 거고 뒤오는 인데 링데 정신 되게 송으로와
나래.
다들 정신 저와 그래서 해로는 상시장 그 외에 팅 다는 다저 들어가 통면 신터 교육에서 저러와
나.
어디 저런데 가서 탱교를 지고 온 지고래 인데 영어 영어 지고 온 지고 수인 지고 온 지고 저완이 시샤스
나.
现在영어写的容易你记过来是我的那些人你记过来什么样
알라로노스. 렉션이 무제로 들어가게.
really
So Geshe says, yes, in the light of wisdom of Sherab Jeme, the Tibetan proper title of Baba Viveka, which is a critique of Buddha Palita's work, syllogism, because right in the beginning, Buddha Palita started to lay out the what called refuting the 4 types of production, right? And Baba Viveka takes issue with that. Then he said, is your syllogism in the sense of refutation syllogism is more in autonomous sense of whatever, right? So the Tibetan word is rawang, so which is the same. And so this has also been, I think, mentioned or in the Lama Tsongkhapa's lecture Nyingpo, Essence of Eloquent Explanation, about that. Yeah. Yes, Jim.
So my question's a kind of a dumber version than of Vlad's.
Sure.
I also was having a hard time understanding how it can be that Baba Vika and those like him could be asserting intrinsic existence when my understanding is that selflessness is one of the basic tenets of Buddhism. Buddha
Yes.
himself taught it, Hinayana has it, everything has selflessness.
Right.
So how would this implication or straightforward statement of intrinsicness
Sure.
not have identified Baba Vika and his type as non-Buddhist philosophers?
Okay, sure. Quran condition the dirish again, tanda Loben Lenden Chig Rang Singing to Dugo or Wagan. The contest Sabres, that Loben Chumbo in the Chig Wagan. Penanangbe, it do the Kawaii by in a Tam Evadi, can get killing or Wagan. Says a Tam Ever Duty and Nangbe Tawa in a minute said that Rangshin Druba Jeduk and Ta doing or Chagor was Wagan. Jedukala and Beloven Chumbo in the Chig, any Nangbe, she said Tam Ever Tawa the pub, you shall such a Wagan. Ta you ever shared the contest chat even as again.
ale 되게 다 매워서야 돼 산지 쉬다 또 다음에 왔어 다들 너무 되다가 강가 캐는 거로
No.
다 매서야 돼야 차라도 뭐 저다 쉬어라 당부 저다 쉬샤로
No.
저다 쉬 어디 다 너대마다 지라마 어디 치료 어디 작바지지 되네 될매마 지라마 어디서 찍시 샘잠바시 인도랑이 바시 어디네 소소도 담에서야 돼 고아도 문다 레레렌도 담에 걔는 뭐지 뭐로
Not it.
어떻게 내다 다 로닝데 제때 데데스다 가서 랑시 주바서야 돼 가르스나 근데 그나 유코나 그때는 유여바 되게 나 가서 너다 희게 되나 너다와 지고 뭐이 봐
No.
유이된 짠이 매서는 얘네가 탁배루나 예자데 자제가도 딴 택 말이지
No.
어디 다 르바 탈도도 되졌던 거라 빼가는 신나다 김에 빼도 되고도 와 제가 김하게 니히다나 주에 뒤에제 에네 나제 메레바시 니힌라 나디 쇼바시 인가고도 와
No.
제가 루타바지고이나 이네 니힌라 나제 마주시 데모알 메레야기 딩가디 자샤나 인 니히다나 나 고치거든 나고면도 아시
I don't know.
그래서 유교는 요급이 교대 쪼디 해거다.
I don't know.
다 유지원원이네요. 뉴가자 매일가 맞잖아요. 뉴다는 통고에서 말봐.
Not it.
세다 유도 유지 인소 고세야 유대디 유도다 땡큐 참더 내더라. 다 깨지지 못해 땡큐가 들어주.
Not it. That under Loben Lenden Chig Ranshin drew a killing your in a Tam ever Tawa killing the go. But that did some woman. The Kemalam was toned to the door.
알레 다음에 캐내야 되거다. 다음에 캐내는 건데 두다마 희가 다음에 캐내야
The killing you Tam ever the culture again.
나
Killing you Tam ever the culture.
캐르바 샤베와 됐다. 지저거다. 시다마스데 다데와 있나 랑자 가다 다제 랑아제 다음에 봐.
That's it. I want you to tell me.
가자. 되네 랑샤테베 제요 다음에 봐. 더 될야 섬자마다 이네 랑주 디행이 어디는 강사 담에다 최이 담에 인식어야.
No,
지라마도 최이 담에 계셔요 말아.
no, no.
안데 때려야 강사 담에다 너 대바나시더야. 뒤가 최이 담에 더바지 샤고로 와.
No.
다 뒤에는 가가셔. 최이 담에 강사 담에 가가셔. 다 거기 랑주 면식 그거 가가셔도 와.
No, no.
다 대기는 날에서도 최이 담에다 강사 담에인가 시 최신 모두 이제 가자를 타라요 말이지. 다 인가 찍어줘 세니 저기로 와.
No, right. So that again, the Roman language is share the memory culture.
다음에 샤디 다 거기서 라자 때문에 제요 동아 담에 대하 샤주고 다 쉐이 담에 신나 된도 다 데버트베 동아 담에 와 쉐이 담에 샤드와
The thing to say it, because the deal don't number to say. I'm trying to get more clarity to answer. So yes, Buddha taught about anattama or the selflessness, which is accepted by all schools of thought. Okay, but then different schools of thought come up with different interpretations of what that selflessness means. You know, as we know that Vaibhashika, Sautrantika, and Chittamatra and Madhyamika, they come with different explanations in many ways. What does that selflessness mean? You know, in the case of Sautrantika and Vaibhashikas, they talk about selflessness in the sense of permanent, independent kind of self, right? Lack of that kind of self, or the self-sufficient and substantially existent self. There is no such self, right? That's how they explain it, And so in the lower schools, they only talk about selflessness in that sense. And then you go up in the higher schools like Chittamatra and Madhyamika, then they talk about two types of selflessness. Selflessness of a person, selflessness of a phenomena. Okay? And Chittamatans and Savatantaka Madhyamikans, they will assert slightly different what those selflessnesses are. And then you ask the Prasangikas, for them, selflessness is selflessness. The only difference is one is established on the person, others on the phenomena. There is no difference at all, right? So I think the different Buddhist schools of thought accept selflessness, but different interpretations of understanding what it is. So I try to ask Geshe, so given that Baba Viveka accepts intrinsic reality, so what is the selflessness that Baba Viveka accepts? The selflessness Baba Viveka accepts is based upon there is no true existence. Okay? And so Baba Viveka accepts intrinsic reality because he says, things appear to us perception as being intrinsically existent, and that's how it exists. Okay? He said things are objectively existent. If they're not objectively existent, then there should not be difference between a fake snake and the real snake. He said, it has to be the same. Okay? And so the example he used to illustrate the point is that of a magic show. What a magician does is, to create this illusion, magicians will use incantation on the perceptions of the spectators, but also use the mantra or the incantation on the tricks and pebbles, the substance. Okay? Why the magician has to do both? Why can't he only, bless the perception and not the? Because it doesn't work. Both has to be. If you simply use the mantra on the pebbles and rocks, it doesn't work. He still has to use the mantra or the perception, or vice versa. So the assertion here is Baba Viveka thinks that there is something that exists from the side of the object. There has to be, but then it couldn't be 100%. There has to be some kind of subjectivity involved, And so that's how, in a nutshell, Baba Viveka accepts intrinsic reality, but also accepts the emptiness or the selflessness of true existence. Yeah. So, and he doesn't see any contradiction there. Yeah. Any other thoughts? So among the many examples, it is upheld that Savatantikas find that magician's example as the best example, because it takes both of the subject and the object. Because for them, the assertion is that how things exist. It's almost like a combination, a little bit from here and a little bit from there. It's a combo number one kind of a thing. He didn't say that, but So that for the magicians, the example works very well because you're going to bless the mantra on the substance, on the perception, right? But then for the Prasangikas, the best example is the coiled rope, right, which is imputed as a snake and the real snake, and that example works well because things are merely labeled. Nothing is there from its side, Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Go ahead. Okay, this will be the last question now.
How would the Prasangikas actually interpret that, the magician's illusion? For example, would they say that the twigs and pebbles are not necessary because the twigs and pebbles are the thing that exists from its own side, right? Would they say, no, it's not necessary, they're just kind of a location in space where everybody has to be looking at, but it's not that they are what transforms into horses and
Okay,
elephants?
sure. Again, the you be shy about you may actually say Delia and Tinju Beg Tabby in Arabagan. And a condensed secure in Asa, Penata, Dadake did about a dusing talent driver again. Dusing the one a talent chagger, you are called dusing when you are secret. Tinju Beg the condensed disease again. Dusing the Kalsada.
Dusing talent that did no Jayada, married the neg. Then Zoma, then any talent no, you're no, it's Militago talent to Marva. Tell you again, they may pay Karza, Jimepe Michaud, them, Jimepe is not Shara, Shara, some say in the Median Pele Jimata, the Ganga Shivara, Jina Yahu, that the Ranju Jimepe showing up, I see
You be that and you must do again the Jadusing and the Shasho or
really Castle.
Yeah, you much do again, Casalanza, talent, or the talent. No, just trying to clarify. Geshe says, yeah. It's not that the Prasangikas couldn't use the magician as, they could probably, but they prefer the coiled rope snake, that works better with them, And what would the Prasangikas say about that? Is they said, what? The only reason where there is appearance of horse and elephant is because of the coming together of these different causes and conditions. There's twigs and pebbles, there's a mantra, played on that. So because of this whole dependent origination, things appear. Nothing on its own, right? Yeah. All right, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll stop there. Oh, announcement. Can this show short? Next Saturday, July 7th, the Tibetan Association of Southern California, TAS, and along with all the Dharma centers, right, Ganden Sharze and Ganden Shuling, and then I don't know what others. So they're together organizing His Holiness birthday celebration at Vietnamese temple in Westminster. Excuse me, I'm not going to say this Vietnamese word right, but it might sound quite close. Chau Di Ngui Vietnamese Buddhist temple. Anyway, this is the big temple where His Holiness visited, right? It's a brand new, kind of a huge temple there. So it's from 11 to 3, and everybody's welcome. It's a potluck, vegetarian potluck. Here the Tibetans say that, vegetarian potluck. So we will be there. So next Saturday, July 7th, 11 to 3. In 2 Saturdays, July 7th, whichever it is. Oh, sorry, not the next Saturday. You see, I'm losing the conventional reality here. So thanks for the reminder. July 7th, that Saturday, maybe 2 Saturdays down the road, will be His Holiness birthday celebration. Again. Gange Lorde, Demien, Jende, Nienda, Namda, Rabzebe, Jinyen, Dungun, Shije, Zeje, Nije, Toga, Lebanze, Kanda, Zebe, Zera, Mendon, Dungen, Gizebe, Rozo, Gala, Boje, Daze, Yala, Doje, Yanden, Zon, Doda, Zero, Yemo, Leje, Jaro, Zeje, Mare, Veze, Dungen, Yugo, Shinye, Jeze, Dene, Daje, Saje, Daze, Yenden, Lenzo, Geze, Tuvi, Gu, Chura, Chura, Chunye, Jende, Dalu, Meze, Jambe, Yanlan, De, Omara, Badana, Amara Bazana, De, Zende, Jeje, Kera, Veze, Ye, Dalu, Temo, Mimba, Rapse, Kata, Tenje, Shulu, Roger, Bove, Na, Zendo, Roger, Yazu, Vizon, Beba, De, Kesan, Pove, Chido, Mimba, Temba, Zenla, Wando, Kichebe, Tanya, Shogun, Jala, Sova. Could you do the Manjushri prayer? Obeisance to Manjushri.
You have been here from the beginning. You have created the stages and this action sequence, whose principal body is adorned with 112 miles of wisdom. Bow down to my adoration. Om Mara Prasan, O compassionate one with the intellect and immense wisdom, living in the darkness of closed my mind, enlarging my intelligence and wisdom so that I may remain with Phuntsok, able to possess words and texts and speech. Life is weaker than
Nhất tâm kính lễ Đức Văn Thù Sư Lợi, bậc đại trí Ngài điều phục hai chướng ngại, tự nhật quan lan tỏa khắp mười phương, Phật thực chứng chân nghĩa màu rốt ráo, từ tim Ngài Bát Nhã Kinh thủ hộ nhiệm màu, cõi luân hồi chúng sanh thọ nghiệp báu, bị ngăn che bởi phiền não vô minh, sở hữu 60 pháp âm thù thắng, cùng đại bi Ngài hóa độ chúng sanh, tựa từ mẫu chăm lo cho quý tử, tiếng rồng vang Ngài thức tỉnh hữu tình, thoát khỏi vòng luân hồi nghiệp báu, gươm trí tuệ Ngài chặt đứt vô minh, tận diệt muôn vàn khổ đau cùng ách nạn, trường từ Như Lai tối thắng toàn giác, Ngài an trụ nơi thập địa pháp vân, báu thân Ngài trang nghiêm thanh tịnh, 112 tướng hảo Như Lai, đê đầu đảnh lễ Đức Văn Thù Sư Lợi, cúi xin Ngài tận diệt ám chướng vô minh. Om Arapasanadi. Ban pháp lực diệt phiền não vô minh, được trí sáng con thâm nhập nghĩa màu, pháp vi diệu cùng muôn vàn luận giải, như diệu hương ngọt ngào từ sen trắng, đàn xanh nơi trí thủ thắng đại dương, hàng thiện căn như ong mật thọ nương, hồng danh Ngài khắp mười phương quảng bá, đấng thiện xảo uy dũng bảo tồn pháp bảo vô giá. Nam mô Lốp Sang Tenzin Quang Đắc, xin cung kính trì niệm.